Okay. So, hi everybody. My name is Maria Warshaw. I'm the founder and executive director here at BAX. Welcome to a couple of new faces. Come on in. Today is the first of our open studios of this year, and they feature our artists in residence, and 4 of our artists in residence are sharing some of what they've been working on, both the work and the thinking, and we're really happy to have you join us today. We're live streaming this particular show. Hi, everybody at home. Hey. It's for twofold reasons. One, for folks that couldn't join us today, either because they weren't available or because they couldn't make it up our steps. And we wanted to make sure that this work and this space get shared with them. And also it serves as a record for our artists and for the institution itself. So if you are available, we would love to have you hang out after this is over. We're going to court you by feeding you. We have new food coming too. So if you've already had some grapes or some cheese, you know, you could stay around and see what else comes out. And then there's always, you know, it's 4 and you can start drinking. So. And the last 2 showings of the day become very interesting. Ayagawa is sharing work in a couple of hours, and after that, Itasekiyev is sharing work. So we've got quite a day ahead of us. I'm not going to continue at this point. I'm going to introduce you to Luciana Achugar, who's going to tell you kind of where we're at the moment. Luciana. Yay.
Hi, thank you for being here. This is Efrain Rosas, he's the composer. And so we just wanted to give some context for this because we just did this. I've been working on this piece for a while, and we did a showing in June. We did a show here. Some of you were here and have seen it. And then we premiered at Skirball. There's part of this piece are also Molly Lieber and Sarah White. And they had other engagements today. And so we already premiered the piece, but we are going to keep working on it. So since there was today this occasion, we decided to experiment with how we're interested in continuing working on it. And I want to say, Efrain wants to say something about his work with this too, but I just want to say that, what do I want to say about, what else? So yes, I'm trying some things that are, that I didn't get to try in the piece when we premiered it. And also, I just want to say something about the relation, your gaze. So when we did it at Skirball, I began giving a speech in the lobby, asking people to so today we're experimenting with a very classical, like you're there obviously, we're here. So this, at Skirball being such a, classical, like proscenium stage and all that history of the theater, I invited the audience in through the stage with us. But I specifically asked people to consider their labor as audience. So I think even though today it's very easy, your job, you're just sitting there watching, you don't have to make choices. What I want you to consider is that there's a labor in that, even you're just sitting on your asses in your chair. To consider your labor is just an offering of having that frame already as your view.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah,
Maybe we can talk after.
After, yeah, we're not gonna take the whole time to
Yeah.
do, so, thank you.
Great.
start talking. Sorry. I like the music at home, but also like
I'm sorry?
I'm okay. I mean, I don't know. I'm okay, but
No good.
thank you for. I don't know if I should ask you questions. Do you have anything you want to share about your experience? Not like an intellectual analysis. It could be, but not necessarily. Or if you, like, a few of you were in the show, so I wonder if there's something. I felt like I discovered some things that we went to that we couldn't get to in the show, but I also discovered that I have the same. I don't have this. I already lost most of my stamina. It's amazing. In 3 weeks, damn, I could barely. It's harder with people too.
You asked everyone to consider the labor.
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's a good place.
Yeah, that's a good place. Yeah. Because I feel like I noticed with some critique that came out that I got really upset that I know it's like whatever, it's not to give that so much importance, but one thing that upset me is that I prefaced that as asking people to consider that, and some of the critique that came out was replayed that, like narrated the story as she gave us a choice between being on stage or being in the chairs, and that's very different than saying consider your labor, and that it also means you're entering through the stage, but you know, I generally like to give a more conceptual thing like this and then leave people to have their own agency to decide how they're reading that, how they want to read them. Literally, like, do I want to sit or do I want to stand or do I want to walk or do I want to see it from over here or over there? But it seems like people are not, the world's not ready for anarchy, like there's, that's how I see it. It's like, I feel like people are scared to have too much responsibility and agency, so we're not there yet. So maybe I have to give more cues. So, yeah.
I wanted to, I guess, structure.
Yeah.
And like this setup, right? And this work that I'm witnessing, that I don't really
Okay.
for me, like at some point in time, I had to get up. You know? And so when you just said that, I mean, I think that the idea of anarchy is something that I don't know that people want or don't want, you know? I mean, I think that it's a thing that happens when you step into how to, you know, like how you step back into the space, like how you went, it was a process, you know, and it destabilizes structure. And it destabilizes like our commitment to the structure that was set up. I mean, both governmental structure, political structure, social structure, physical structure too. Like how embedded are we to that thing? You know, and must we stand? Must we continue to watch? And then what like that, like how do we charge ourselves with witnessing this act, like this immense act? Like how do we charge ourselves with that shit, you know? I don't know, it's just a comment, it's not like I have an antidote or anything like that, you know. I just feel like, just a comment on you thinking that people are ready or aren't ready. You know, it's like ready for the revolution when I was coming up, you know. Find your way with people to phone say, ready for the revolution. And I remember my father was like, ready for the revolution, why would you even ask the question if you are in it? And that those little small things, kind of like when Mia was talking about in her work, things that seem to be still, like, are they still a part of? Yes, they are. With a snake, when it sheds its skin, is it still a snake? Kind of thing, you know? Yeah, just,
Yeah, I mean, I made the comment about anarchy and stuff, but it's not like I'm thinking, that was,
yeah,
no, I
it's not-
hear what you're saying. I mean, I think I was referring to that like more as the experience with Skirball or like previous work, but here it wasn't set up like that at all. I just, you know, like there is the structure, like you're saying. I mean, in a sense, I wonder, in the doing of it, maybe I should ask you, I think you answered that already, but it makes me think, maybe it's more powerful to propose that question and to keep the structure like this, because then you're, as an audience, you're faced with your own, like you said, you wanted to stand up, it's your own choice. Like, why do I have to stay seated and watch this if I don't want to? Like, that's up to, like, you are faced with that in your own, as I was when I was like, okay, I'll just set it up in this, like, frontal, like before I had been like, you can be wherever, but to set it up in this very frontal way, when you cross that, when I come back to the chair, it has a different charge if it was already set up. Like when there is structure, and that's what we were trying to do at Skirball, like there's the architecture of it, the presence of the magnitude of that. It feels like patriarchy and capitalism and Western, you know, all of that history is in that space. The power of that, we feel so, when we came into that stage, we felt, it's like you feel so insignificant inside of that. How do I deal with this, with this? But anyway, I don't know if that's the question. I guess the question is,
It'd be interesting to just hear how people
Yeah.
did feel.
yeah,
Like just
Yeah,
in the past half hour.
yeah.
I guess one thing which is related to labor, but I found myself considering a lot like one's relationship to one's literal body and sort of like labor's relationship to one's literal body. In a way that's both really intriguing and really intense for me, because there's sort of something about this practice that feels like it suggests that all of the answers are in this sort of like anatomical, which I can, you know, have mixed feelings about, I guess. And yeah, but not so much pro or con, just sort of like the insistence on like keeping it in the flesh and in that I haven't formed like an opinion about it. It's just like a really intense thing.
But you know that just to understand what you're saying is virtually that it's proposing that, it almost seems like it's proposing that that it's all in this felt world, like all the metaphor of the body
Yes.
it's all within that.
Yes, or sort of it made me wonder whether that's the intention or not about sort of like the parts of ourselves that cannot be summed up to our like literal body, and sort of like if there's almost like a pummeling or an insistence or a desire of yours to like return to the physical in this way that just has a lot of weight to it, and I both find myself like sort of appreciative of the invitation and resistant of the invitation at the same time.
So it's like that's why, I mean, I hear a lot of people say that it's difficult. That's what's partly difficult about it.
For me,
And to experience, to sit through it, because
Yeah.
it's like an insistence of like, that's what's not like a
it's not about to me
No,
pretty at all. But it is about, it does bring up a series of questions also about what sort of bodies get to do that, what bodies don't get to do that, what bodies get to be read that way, what bodies don't. And sort of a series of a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I found myself getting exhausted by the labor of trying not to read your body, because there were just so many images for me of, I'll just be totally honest with everyone, sex work, sexual violence, the labor of sex work. So I'm really like, I really mean like what, for me, the images that kept on coming up were like, if I had to fuck people for 17 hours straight, like what would, I felt that in my body, and I was trying so hard not to read.
Why were you trying not to read?
Because I was like, well then, well, so it was a funny exercise for me. I think it was kind of like I was both watching, but then I was like, okay, so I'm watching now, so what am I reading? And then I was trying to disentangle myself from reading those things onto your body, because I was like, well, that's what I'm reading onto your body, but I don't know. Well, I don't know. But then I was like, okay, so this is the labor of audience then, because then I'm watching, I'm projecting, and I'm reading. So I was trying to get a little bit out from underneath the reading, but I just couldn't. And then I just felt really physically exhausted, because I was like, oh, it's so impossible not to read. Yeah.
I had a very similar,
Oh.
yeah, I had a very similar journey also of like, you know, I read similar things. I'm also thinking, I mean, in particular, like the focus around the butt, you know, as a Black woman, I definitely can't help but engage with what it does for my body and my relationship with my butt. Right, so I was having like a lot of conversations around like what bodies get read in what ways and what bodies can perform certain actions in what contexts, right? Because like that certain actions can be also performed in a strip club, and that's not art. Of course, we know it is, right? But you know, like this idea around like labor and like what bodies get to labor in what ways. And then similarly, I was like, stop it! And you're ascribing, you're placing that on this work, like encounter the work with your body on its own terms, and yet my brain and body are connected. And so I was like having this similar tense and dissonant conversation with myself. And then when I asked myself to just experience on like an emotional landscape term and like a body term, I found myself with different desires and different pulls. One of which was to participate. And I experienced that at Skirball too. I was just like, I mean, I think that the emotional pull became more than for me about like guilt, I think, and shame, because it was so hard for me to watch you like work out, and like I'm not working out right now, and like it's really stressful for me because I gained a lot of weight this year. So I was just like really fucked up within myself, you know, because I haven't been able to like make space to move my body, you know, and so just like. Yeah, so I was just like,
So it places you with your own.
Yeah, so I was like, that wall, I was like, this like little proscenium wall, like how important is that? Like, what is the ask of me? Like, can I just come move with you? Or I want to slap my jeans against the wall, but the patriarchy fucking man, you know what I mean? Like, so many of those acts felt really liberating, and one of the things that I felt in this one that I didn't feel as much in Skirball was like this feeling of that liberation, and also that feeling of like, I was there the second night, I think.
Yeah.
And also that feeling of radical passion that I felt came alive more so in this one, and maybe because you were more tired, I don't know. But versus that one, it just felt a feeling that made me want to, felt like more of an invitation for me.
I felt more with the, how about with the, no, thank you, that helps a lot, because I felt some of that today that I think has to do with not being in the role of choreographer. Right. I think it's just because I went to a place, and we were talking about the relationship to the music where the like instead of, like the way it was choreographed is like this work that takes, it's the work, and it kind of answers, maybe it's like, it's this like the labor, I do very specifically think like within our own relationship of, that I don't believe in like a separation of the physical and the other aspects, but that there is also a very physical matter, flesh aspect to us that through it, that I don't think that because it isn't a separate, there is no real separateness of all of the beings. So, but that but that it's almost like the labor, the muscles, the flesh, that aspect is the working. It is kind of like within ourselves, in our own experience of ourselves, is the working class, in a sense, is the labor. It's the, you know what I mean? It's like within us there is that, and that through the starting from that place of being in that basic level of the work and there's something about repetition and exhaustion that through it, and it's interesting that you say as a black woman, because I mean obviously I'm not a black woman, but we talk a lot about, like, Ephraim's project is a lot about, like, this kind of decolonization of music too, is like our experience to, I don't know, that's a whole other conversation. I'm scared to enter it, and I don't want to speak for you, but what I mean is that there is something that starts to happen in the flesh, and in the moments where sometimes I'm like, oh, I become aware of it, like, oh, this is not unlike twerking, and it's happening, and there's people of color seeing me do this, and they might be thinking like, oh, what's that white girl doing that? But then I'm not. I don't feel like I'm really necessarily a white girl. I grew up with, like, you know, shaking my ass not the same way, but I don't have this white girl relationship of dancing necessarily, this American white, you know, like but also it happened in itself through the labor, through the work. Like when you work your ass off, literally, that there is a releasing that the body starts to do. So I am interested in this anatomical level, very much like a dancer. I started making work after, I never meant to be a choreographer. I was not just a dancer, but so I am very geeky about that. Like I'm interested in what does the body do when it's tired. It shakes out, it releases, and what's the relationship to timing and rhythm that we're starting with this, the relationship to time and rhythm, because also we didn't talk about it before, but it's Kerbo, something you've seen. It's like here you can see him in the computer doing it, but it's a program that maybe you should talk about.
So actually in Scribble there was a robotic sculptor.
Yeah.
So what I did now is, so basically it's an algorithm that it's a resting circular relationship. No, I feed into it stuff, and then it generates stuff, and then for me the most interesting thing about this project has been how to develop a technology, because I created the software, the interaction platform, and also the actual software and the brain of the robot and everything. So for me it's very interesting how to use technology in this way where I can relate to energy with a body, you know, that is there, and using this different interface of the software. No, all software, I think, video, music, has this Cartesian grid. No, time flows from left to right. You have one clock. My software has like six grids that move around, 8 clocks. So it's another logic. No? I also, like, in my experience of music, is more interesting in that. No? In electronic music was very limiting for me in terms of rhythm. I'm very interested in polyrhythms, in other ways of, not only polyrhythms, but also timing of these arches of energy that you can relate through dance. You know, like for me, like, as I said, we grew up I'm from Peru. For us, I think dance has been so important. For me, basically, to put it in simple, I really crave a space where social dance, collective dance, is connected to questions that have been made maybe more in experimental spaces or museum or academia. Where is that midpoint? No? Kind of a serious social dance or whatever you want to call it. And that implies also a relationship to technology, to energies. So to create a technology that is more in touch with that, no? And I think, that's an experiment that on my side has been very interesting. You know, how it has to do with labor, actually, you know, and technology, and what concepts of time and energy technologies represent, you know, and how much agency do we have in creating other technologies that are informed by other ways of seeing time and the body and energy and these energies, no, that flow from the relationship between time and the body. So, I don't know if I went to another thing, but that's kind of what.
Yeah, do we need to? I think Maya was telling us.
Let me know that we can go on for a little bit.
Oh,
So.
I don't know.
Yes.
It's.
I just
Do you know about TRE?
About what?
TRE.
TR? No.
It's basically what you're saying. It's called like tremor release therapy.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Kind of. No, not specifically.
Anyway, it's like TRE. It's basically everything you're already saying and
Yeah.
doing, but it's just crazy because there's like a whole TRE institute and stuff, and like they use it to like release trauma and through the body, and it's a lot of. I think the institute is based in LA, but they do a lot of work around victims of sexual violence. And anyway, it just feels like such
I think
a.
there's one in Boston as well.
Yeah, it's totally all around, and it's just so. It's just. I was thinking about that as well while you were tremoring.
There's something about like what you said about this, like having more, like that touched me about like that you said about radical passion, that there was something here. What we were talking about is trying to do, like instead of a more linear, like what Freddy said about time, the relation of time and rhythm, and what we were, you know, being like when it premiered at the Marx Festival, we were talking about capitalism in relation to labor, and you know, if you think of the extreme being slave labor, and so, sorry, I'm getting the liberation of the body. Like it's interesting in terms of rhythm, like that a lot of this rhythm practice, a lot of it, it's connected to work. Like this liberate, like rhythm is a liberating thing, but then when rhythm is marked, when there's that's when, like when we were talking about, like it's a robot marking time, it's very like oppressive in a sense, right? And here's, and also in relationship to time, that a way to I feel like we talked about a lot about the process of like how do you, it's not just like a complaining, like, oh, look at this, look at poor us working hard. It's not that I'm interested, I can see how it's difficult to watch in that way, and these images that come up, these like sexual labor, all of that, I'm aware of it as I'm doing it. It's not about something, so I can see, and I appreciate that you guys were doing the labor of like, wait, I guess like I'm seeing that, but maybe that's, I mean, I think that's exactly the labor of the audience in a sense, is not assuming that what you see is necessarily the only intention of the work. It's like keeping yourself seeing it, but seeing also, continuing to see more. And I'm definitely interested in really obvious references, like putting heels on and like gender identity, but also like not being like, it's like the insistence of the butt. I'm really interested in this almost like Pilobolus style. That's why I decided like, okay, maybe it's okay to just see it from the front. If you just see an ass over and over and over and over after time and time again, it becomes itself. So to me, it becomes a self that is not a gendered self. It's not I guess it is the color of the skin that it is, but I hope that it also can be read in many,
I have something to say about the music, about that. A lot of people like said, he said like her like mambo or something like that. And people attribute these genres that are not there. It's just simply polyrhythms. And I think there always there is this attribution to salsa or maybe some other types of Yoruba rhythms, no, that can be attributed. But it's just simply it's polyrhythmic structures. And I think we are so used to a very particular way of feeling rhythm that anything that goes away from that we immediately attribute it to salsa or West Africa, and there's this whole world of that, and I think that is very interesting too for me to. It's kind of in an ethnography of the robot, how people react to this robot doing this stuff, what people attribute to it, what race they attribute to it, to this software, to this robot, to this thing, and it's very interesting that too. I don't know, for me it's been, at least that's been my experience with this, like this. Opening
culture, like there's an assumption that when there's a polyrhythm, it's only belongs
to some, or even saying it, it's this rhythm, no? And it's not at all. It's just very basic principles. It's just another grid, and that is similar, of course, to some West African matrices of rhythm, but it's present in many cultures, and it's very simple actually.
But it's not like a European culture.
I mean, it could, no, it could be some things of it, but it's different for sure from this. What is different is this grid, no? That it's one clock and this time clock from left to right. It's another principle that fits from, yeah, definitely from African diaspora, but from rhythms from the Andes too, or the Amazon in Peru that I've been listening to all my life. So, but yeah, I think it's very interesting that how opening up these spaces raises questions that I think are important. Raises questions of how we relate to the body and through technology. In my side, at least, that's the most interesting thing.
I'm gonna, for now, and let Aya get set up. 3 o'clock, we're gonna do a showing, and there's coffee and tea and food and wine and blah, blah, blah. And you'll join us, maybe?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it really did become like a thing. Oh, that's
It's dry, where it's like it takes up, it has its, I feel like the butt has anything.
Yeah, right.
I described it, I explained it, it has something that's we don't often see. Two
Two other things. One is the stress that you put on the word labor makes me think of birthing labor.
Yeah.
Your female body, you know,